change in my voice. This video is about why it is called reverse racism. When, say, black people start resenting white people in America. See, first of all, the world has been very much changed by whites, Jews, and LGBT people. Okay, some people would argue the white man, and they would want me to leave the Jewish people and the LGBT people out of it. Well, it's very simple, really. When the whites went around colonizing the world, there was a lot of Jews with them, and there was a lot of in-the-closet LGBT people with them. That's why there's so much LGBT activity in the church. It goes back to these ancient, these old, rather, church societies that are full of LGBT people. That's why so many church people abuse children. They meet in church, at the church, what have you, and Christians and Protestants alike. Catholics and Protestants alike. And it goes way back to Rome. Okay, the Council of Nicaea was in France, and it was part of the Roman Empire. And there's a reason why they say the French are romantic in Paris and so on. And some of the, the place with perhaps the highest rate of homosexuality in the world as an entire nation is probably France. When I was younger, I read a study that said that as many as 25% of French males were either gay or bisexual. I don't know if it's true, but they were saying that it's way up there. And this is not something that happened recently. It's been going on forever. There's a reason why French people kiss each other, on the cheek, and guys might kiss each other on the cheek. I don't know what they do in that regard, but in some cultures, males kiss each other on the cheek, and I suspect it goes back to ancient sort of gender-neutral cults, Dionysus, these cults that spread around the world, and I've come across them in my research for years now. There's an overwhelming amount of evidence that there were a bunch of LGBT secret societies who were trying to manipulate things all throughout history. Okay, for the last maybe 8,000 years. It goes way back one way or another. So anyway, when we look at the issue of racism, why is it called reverse racism? Well, I want you to picture that you're in Somalia, okay, and that there's a very strict Muslim regime there, and they're giving you a hard time because you're not a Somalian, and because you're not a Muslim. It's because of both. And to them, there's that kind of sub-racial imperative, right? They want people to be Somalian, and they want people to be Muslim, and they want people to kind of kiss their butt, right? This is a common problem in nations all over the world. So it's important to note, that, Somalians didn't come up with Islam, right? This is something that another group impressed upon them. So to some degree, it's not entirely their fault. B, when the people who colonized the world, they didn't impress upon people that nations should be fair, racially speaking. They impressed upon them racial supremacy. So they're then arguing, hey, we're just another nation doing it, right? And their governments are modeled after Western governments and so on and so forth. Right? Look at the details of the government and how they relate to other nations. It's a Western system, and it goes back to Rome. Okay. So you're there, and they're giving you a hard time. And you've been there for years and years. Now imagine if they started changing the government, and they said, from now on, we're free. And we're going to stop pressing people. It's going to be a very defined secular system where we put an emphasis on people having rights. And for quite some time, decades go by, and they say that's the case. So now you're about 40 years old. Okay, the first 20 years of your life, they were pressing you. Second 20 years of your life, they're still pressing you, but they're arguing that it's a free nation, and they're putting a special emphasis on it, and they're going way out of their way to propound certain propaganda. So now you're a little confused, right? You're confused about it a little bit. You're like, hey, you're saying it's free. And you have all these, these new laws that say that people aren't supposed to mess with me, and so on and so forth. Now, the spirit that they have that's messing with you, and you don't miss that for a second, is black, and it's Muslim, and it's Somalian. And so when you're in your house by yourself after being harassed by these people subtly at every turn and otherwise. You might start calling them names. Now, how fair is it for you to call them names when nobody is looking? One can argue it's fair, right? They're racially harassing you at every turn. They see things firmly in terms of race. You look at a world where everyone sees things firmly in terms of race and pretends that they don't at times, where people almost always marry each other. You could be in a town with it's 2% black and like 98% white. White people will date each other. The black people will date each other almost like clockwork. Sometimes they date each other. Sometimes they date, the interracial dating, what have you. But for the most part, people date each other, no matter what the demographics are. So you're used to that. It's sleeped into your subconscious. And you know that part of the reason why they're giving you a hard time is because of their religion, their culture, and their race. So people find it more understandable that you resent them. Now imagine you're in America and you're black. And the culture of the white people here, the Jews here, the LGBT people here, the kind of neo-Roman culture, 1 in 10 Roman citizens were Jews, and countless of them were LGBT. It comes from them. This isn't Somalia. It doesn't come from Arabs. Their government doesn't come from the West, okay? Their culture and their government and their religions and how they apply them come from white people, Jews and LGBT people. And they're harassing you in the country that they say is the freest country in the world. And they're harassing you, say, California, which is said to be like the freest place on the planet, to some people at least. It isn't quite. This is the home of cancel culture. It's probably where it started, but they say that it is. And imagine you're the most handsome person that ever lived with a universal scale. The next person is like Dick Dastardly compared to whoever you think is handsome. The gap is like that big. And you've done a sound universal comparison. And these people have a serious chip on their shoulder in regards to that. Some try to get tans. Some say they're jealous of, breasts and booty and so on and so forth. And some of them try to make it seem like, black people are as dirty as the dirtiest black person or the dirtiest white person or whatever. And so they have a serious chip on their shoulder. When it comes to giving the black man his credit about his intelligence, they say he's just the N-word. When it comes to admitting that he's more handsome than they are, they say, the one that is me, right? There's a spectrum, right? They say he's just the N-word. When it comes to admitting they're more romantic than they are, they say just the N-word, and so on and so forth. Whether it's religion, intelligence, martial arts, handsomeness, they say, no, that couldn't be because he's just an N-word in their own way. You're financially sabotaged, your family sabotaged. They have a controlled opposition Democratic Party that pretends to stick up for minorities, but it's just a corporate party that cancels authentic heterosexual minority cultures. How much of this type of abuse should you be able to take? And where do you draw the line before you start resenting them and their cultures and their religions and how they apply them? Because they come from a long line of people who had that agenda, and there wasn't another racial group that put them up to it. They do it themselves. And then they have the nerve to pretend to care at times. And you're in the heart of democratic America, and they will not stand up for you while you're being racially fucking harassed while they pretend to give a shit. They even pretend to give a shit to the point they voted for a token minority, part black president to help them play it off. At what point should they take responsibility for the problem, which is a collective problem, when not a single one of them will come to your aid while you're being racially harassed in California? At what point do you realize that? See, that's why it's not the same as the Klan targeting somebody or the police or the government for racial reasons, the FBI, the CIA with their racial agendas. They might have token minorities here and there. So what? That's always been how it is in America. Token minorities help racists. When this one guy was killed, I forgot his name. It was a famous case. He was a kid who was beat to death, right? And he was tortured. If you look at the story, there were black people that helped him find the kid and take him captive. That's always been how it is. That doesn't mean anything. So black people are willing to kill and torture black people too in a white spirit. What the hell you think Western gangs are? Black gangs are in the West. They have Roman numerals. The red, white, and blue. The Bloods and the Crips, the red and the blue, and the white man. What do you think they are? Is blood an English word or is it an African word? The streets they claim, are they in Africa? They're made in America. When they came to explain themselves, they say, hey, gang culture is made in America. Western black gang culture that has black on black violence while a bunch of racist whites say they're doing our work for us is made in America and it's regulated by America. And there's informants and assets as far as the eye can see in minority gangs in America. And it's clear cut these days, clear cut. The psyops they do, they're running racial psyops on you, racist psyops on you. What's worse, someone calling you a name and resenting you for what you're doing to them in an organized manner? Or you calculating psychological operations to break them and their race down to the best of your ability? Let's face it, I'm not racist, but if people of color did not resent white Jew and LGBT oppressors for what they've done to them, and every white Jew and LGBT person who plays stupid, they would be fucking insane. So when you're asking them not to resent them as groups with those boundaries as to what is fair to resent them for and who to resent and so on and so forth, okay, when you're asking them not to resent them as groups, you're asking them to go fucking insane and be their bitch. Like, what the fuck don't you get? And there's a difference between that and the righteous indignation that hate made. For the runaway slave to resent white people for having slavery and coming after them and giving them a hard time and abusing them, that's called being right. That's called moral outrage. For the white guys who were hunting them down to resent him for not making it easy for them to hunt him down, it's called being a bitch. It's called being a racist piece of shit. And the fact that some of you can't make that distinction is fucking disturbing. Let's look at this ICE post. It isn't just a regular ICE agent who made the post. They were posting on behalf of ICE, Immigrations and Customs Enforcement. ICE, like you don't see in Africa, so to speak, right? If for nothing else, right? ICE in Europe, no ICE in Africa. Asians are sort of close to, white people, Eurasia, right? And there's snow there, ice there, what have you. That's the idea here. And I'm not saying that there's no ice in Africa. I can't think of a place that has ice in Africa right now, but I don't know. But I do know that most people think of that in terms of, white people. When you say justice, just ICE, just us, right? They think of it in terms of white people, not people who live in places that have warmer climates. And so they said that they want to stop people and things from crossing the border. And they said they wanted to stop ideas from crossing the border. They want to stop people who have a negative opinion of America from crossing the border. And Israel is like an excuse for that. They said, if you're not pro-Israeli, we don't want you to come, to this damn country. And they say, if you're not someone who cheers the white man on as he oppresses the black man in the name of America, that we don't want you here. That is some Leonard Clevis, Billy Bob bitch shit. How could I not resent them for it? They literally persecute me, and if I talk about the military or the police or the government, or America as an idea, they persecute me more. Martin Luther King said, the greatness of America is the right to protest for right. You hear one nation under God, and in God we trust. If you can't put God above America and chastise America in the name of God, then are you putting God above America? You worship the God, the so-called God, of putting America above God. And I worship God. And I proudly am being screened out for that. Proudly. No way would I bootlick to some scumbags who think they should put a mere country above God. That is sick as hell. You people are severely mentally ill. You don't want people in this country if they're going to give me my rightful fucking place. And that is some bitch-ass shit. That is some racist Zionist bitch shit. That's some racist Klan Nazi bitch shit. That is some bitch-made punk-ass shit. Then you got these weirdos in the church who rape kids at record fucking rates. And they don't want people to come in this country if they're going to help me stop child molestation in church. That is some sick fucking shit. 20,000 denominations, 380,000 churches, and they don't want people coming to this country if they disagree with every last one of them. Utter madness. Utter madness. Utter hypocrisy. You call that freedom of speech? You're telling me that only if you're born in America, you have the quote-unquote right to pursue happiness and freedom of religion. But if you come from another country, you don't? That is some sick shit. And you know what they did too? When I was younger, they used to talk about immigrants like they're only Mexican. You know, they come from all kinds of countries, not just South America, and Mexico, what have you. They come from all kinds of countries. But in recent years, they highlighted that. They said there's these Chinese and these Koreans and these Africans, and on and on and on and on and on. Now keep in mind that on the left, they're also canceling cultures. Why? Well, ask yourself, who dominates the left, right? Obviously the governing class. It's a left-right paradigm. They're both controlled parties for the corporate elite, what have you. And they put an emphasis on sexual control, right? Getting more bang for your buck, if you will. Passing around the new girl in corporations, playing sick rape cult games, workplace bullying, coercion. Sexual coercion is an all-time high. But on the left, you see the stated argument that it is token minorities, it's LGBT people, it's certain types of whites, certain types of Jewish people who are said to dominate the left, right? And so they're counseling cultures that are masculine minority cultures, first and foremost, I'd say. As part of their game, they counsel Republican cultures in certain areas to a certain degree. Like, I live in Morgan Hill, there's all kinds of Republicans here. There's no pronounced effort to counsel them, right? This is California, it's mostly blue. There's no, effective effort to counsel Republican culture. Now, Republican culture is also LGBT friendly. It's also Jewish friendly, right? Trump very much supports Israel, what have you. So it's very much Jewish oppressor friendly, if you will. I mean, obviously, it's very white. Like, the left can be seen as like soccer moms who obey psychotic, conservative, value-having corporations, and the right is, the right are the angry military, angry police, angry militia types who obey angry conservative, having white elitists, Jewish elitists, LGBT elitists. Pretty straightforward. So you see the cancel culture on the left, and you see the right having their cancel culture as well. And they put an emphasis on the border to distract you from what you know already, that Republicans do not like people who are different than they are. They give them a hard time in small towns. They give them a hard time at every turn. It's pretty straightforward. They want everyone to suck a white supremacist dick, or they give them a hard time. And they often say things like, if they were a minority, they wouldn't be in a Republican Party of another race. And they say it's pathetic, even though Republicans aren't cowards, but they act like, that they wouldn't do the same thing as the minorities who are foolish enough to be Republicans. It's pretty straightforward how things work. If you are a minority with any heart, with any self-respect, with any honor, especially if you're loyal to God, they counsel your culture, they blacklist you, they persecute you, and if you really do a good job, they gang stalk you. It is fucking sick. It is so sick. When Obama was saying it's going to take all of us to fix this, he wasn't kidding. And the reason why is because so many people are involved in cancel culture. Cancel culture isn't just the federal government and some state governments or something. Cancel culture is enforced by tens of millions of people in America. And in a sense, it's enforced by like everybody but me. Even the people who speak against cancel culture are saying if you speak against cancel culture in a certain way, that they're going to help you. Not if you actually try to end it. And that is sick as hell. The only thing sicker than being a satanic worm trying to cancel righteousness is pretending that you're not a satanic worm trying to cancel righteousness when you're doing just that. That is being a satanic worm trying to cancel righteousness and the cultures of righteousness and the way of thinking of righteousness. I'm persecuted first and foremost for being righteous. It touches on various things. When you're in a white supremacist, white Jewish and LGBT supremacist society, it includes being persecuted for not upholding the principles of white Jewish and LGBT supremacy. You know, those falsehoods, those lies, that toxic way of thinking, what have you. I'm persecuted for not helping them trick women into bed. I'm persecuted for not helping them, abuse children, right? The war against child molestation is like the war on drugs. The government brings in the drugs and they control the flow of drugs for the most part. When it comes to child molestation, the social clubs and the groups and the corporations that are linked to the government and the churches, what have you, are the main people molesting children and setting the stage for child molester cultures to emerge. And every once in a while they throw someone under the bus. To say that the government is waging war on child molestation is like saying the Bloods or the Crips or the Norteños or the Sureños or the Vice Lords or the Gangster Disciples are waging war against gangs. Yeah, they're going to war with gangs, but they're part of the problem. Now, some of you say, well, everyone knows this. You know why people act like a bitch saying everyone knows this instead of manning up like a man as a man and facing them? Partially because every time a real man starts talking about it, some bitch-made fucking coward who probably bends over his kid with a smile on his face says, well, everyone knows this already. And that's some bitch-ass shit.